surprisingly, with my partner,
Back from the
my
dead.
co-host Jason Sunkel, people were starting to speculate, Jay, whether or not you had completely fallen off the wagon and we couldn't find you. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I got hit with the vid pretty bad, and then I was out of town two straight weeks in between, and then it was and then you were out of town. I mean, we haven't
I
done
was
an
out of
NBA.
town.
We haven't had an NBA pod on our feed for like 3 weeks, right? It's been three
I
weeks.
think it's been. I think we missed two of our regular weeks, two regularly scheduled weeks. I think.
So that
So
means
we're
it's
back.
been
We're
three
glad. We're
weeks.
glad to be back. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
glad. Yes, I
Mike's
guess that's
back.
right.
So
So we're
Mike's back with no beard. It's really
no
strange.
beard. No
It looks like
beard.
Mr. Clean a little bit going on there.
My kids tell me that I look like a thumb. That's what they always tell me. They're like,
Well,
Dad, your head looks like a
it could be.
thumb.
I'll just leave it at this. It could be a lot worse than that. So we'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
You
All
have to
right.
be
So
watching live on YouTube to appreciate that
you get.
visual of me holding up my thumb next to my head.
Yeah. Yeah. You can check it out. You can go to our subscribe on our YouTube channel and find that video. You could find it. Anyways, so we're gonna talk primarily about two things tonight. We're gonna talk about Team USA and we're gonna talk about the TV deal. We're gonna start with Team USA because that's the most I guess current stuff to talk about. And I don't know, where do you want to start? Do you want to start LeBron James as George Washington crossing the Seine River? Do you want to start with LeBron is clearly the best player on this team and is actually taking this seriously, and it's amazing what happens when he actually has people around him that can do things. Um, do we want to like? I don't even know. Like
Let's just go player. Let's go player by player. Let's go player by player. We can start with LeBron. Go
LeBron's
ahead.
the best LeBron's the best player in this team, right? I mean, at age 39 or however old he is. I mean, he,
Certainly, he's being put into the role of being the best player and having the most opportunity to do things with the ball. So whether that means that behind the scenes in practice or in the decision making between Grant Hill, Steve Kerr, and the rest of USA basketball, that they've determined that LeBron is the guy they want to build around in whatever shape or fashion they've come to that decision. It certainly looks like that's
I
the
mean,
decision that's been
I
made.
mean,
And it's certainly been,
did
look,
you watch any of the
I
games?
did.
The
I
South
did.
Sudan,
Yeah, I did.
they don't win that game without LeBron in South Sudan game.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I mean, he put them on their back he put the whole team on his back in the fourth quarter. I like there were like three straight plays that was having flashbacks to 2007 when he took the Cavs over the Pistons. I mean, there were like there's just that three there was that three or four play stretch in the fourth quarter that he had in a row, and I'm like, man, he looks like he's 23 out there right now. Like, and the rest of the team, I mean, that was a Embiid. I know we're gonna go player by player. My God, is Embiid terrible? He's an abomination. And then I can't even.
He
Did you
is.
see the?
Yeah.
Did you see
It's
the? Did you see the video of them saying Embiid needs to? Who was that? Who took the video and said, "Embiid, you need to give your passport back." Go. go, so anyways,
I love
I
that
don't know.
I love that the French are booing him at every opportunity. It's just it's perfect. Here's what I'll say. Look, just to well, let's save Embiid and Tatum for
Yeah,
another moment. But yeah, LeBron. Look, in the opening game against Serbia, what he goes for 21 points. I think what 9 rebounds, 8 assists.
eight
He's
assists.
nine of 13, I think, from the floor, and he has the ball in his hands all the time. And whether you think he should or he shouldn't, clearly in that game and through the five exhibition games, he's played very, very well. I read somewhere, I can't remember where I saw it, but basically someone said that this version of LeBron, almost in the fact that he's a little bit slower, a little bit more methodical, he can play kind of that bully ball post up game and work these different things with the guys that are on this team, that it feels like almost he might be a better Olympic FIBA player at age 39 than he was back in his previous opportunities to play in the Olympics. And look, it goes back to, I think what we're going to see here in this discussion that we're going to have as we kind of go through the team one player at a time and look through the lens of each individual guy. I think we're going to see that a lot of the takes that we've shared over the course of the history of this podcast are sort of coming to light in this particular team when you look at the roles that guys are playing and the way that guys are performing. I mean, LeBron, look, we keep saying that Father Time is going to eventually get him, but I mean, the theme is always, yeah, he's going to get him at some point. But LeBron is just continuing to push the envelope of what it means to be a guy who, by all rights, should be out of the league, let alone being the best player on what's probably the second best Olympic team that the U.S. has thrown out there since 1992.
Yeah. Um. Well, I think the next person to go to is Durant. Like, just because of the fact that he's the sixth man off the bench, I'm just go with Durant. And I saw a pretty funny tweet saying, uh, teams getting really excited to play Team USA and see someone come off the bench, and then they realize that Kevin Durant is the sixth man off the bench. Like, he's played, his role has been very good considering he was injured. He played really well in that first game, being the sixth guy off the bench. I know they play tomorrow morning, right? I don't know what time their game's at tomorrow, but I mean, you have to. They're playing South Sudan tomorrow again, right? That's who they're playing.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
there's no way. Okay, I don't know what the spread is, but there's no way that game's close. It's not happening again. It's just not, right. It's not happening again. They
No, I don't think it happens
they
that it's a
came in
close game.
they came in too casually last time. I think
Well, look, it's exhibition. I mean, even when we're talking about any of those games that they played during their exhibition tour, it's still not the same as going out and playing a real game in terms of the team's expectations, in terms of their effort, in terms of their focus. So yeah, I think look, they had to obviously play the full five. I think they were allowed five exhibition games, which some Olympic teams I think did not play the full five, but the US obviously wanted to get as much experience playing together as they could. And so yeah, they needed to play, but the level of intensity that they played at compared to what they played against the level that they played against Serbia and what you would expect them to continue to play at in the actual Olympic tournament was going to be much higher. And so, yeah, I don't expect tomorrow's game or when you're listening to this probably be a game that may have already been played. But yeah, I would be stunned if that South Sudan game is a game in the fourth quarter. I would be shocked.
so. Sorry, I kind of took us on a tangent, but Durant, like, do you have any thoughts? I mean, it's Durant.
What's been our take? What's been our take on Kevin Durant since the finals when he played against the Cavs? It's just that every time the guy goes up for a shot, you expect it to go in. And that was certainly the case against Serbia, where every time he went and took a shot, you expected it to go in. I mean, he came out super hot. He's the all-time leading scorer for USA men's basketball in the Olympics. And the fact that him and LeBron, and then we'll talk about Steph here in a minute, the fact that those guys are playing at such a high level at their age, it just, when you go back and you think about the 92 Dream Team, right? I think Bird at that point was 32 and Magic might have been 31. And those guys, especially Bird, Magic not so much, but obviously he had the HIV crisis there. But Bird with his back, those guys at that young age in their early 30s were kind of already not really at their prime. And then you look at LeBron, almost 40, Durant, 36, Steph, 36. I mean, the fact that these guys are playing at such a high level is incredible. And look, I think Durant, when you look at where he is in his career as an NBA player, I don't think he's a guy anymore who can be the best player on a championship team. But just like you mentioned earlier with LeBron, when you put dudes around him like they have on this team, LeBron's going to look pretty good. And the same thing for Durant. When Durant can just focus on what he still does well, which is shoot the ball and put it in the basket and score, and he's surrounded by four other guys who are at a tremendously high skill level, it's just going to bring out the best in him and in the players around him. And again, honestly, that's what you're really looking for, right? On a basketball team. When we start talking about the makeup of why Derek White's on this team and why Embiid maybe doesn't fit all that well. Part of it is just, again, what type of team are you trying to build? And clearly in LeBron and Durant, the first two guys we've talked about, I mean, those two guys have clearly defined roles that they're going to excel at, especially when they're surrounded by other great players. So yeah, I mean, to me, Durant is just, it's what he does. And I don't think he can do it as the best player on a championship team at the NBA level anymore. But when he's your sixth man in the Olympics, yeah, he's going to be able to come in. The guy's going to be able to shoot when he's 80. So it's not
Yeah.
surprising.
All right. I guess. And let's do Embiid now. Embiid now.
Yeah, yeah, Embiid.
What an
Let's do it.
abomination! What an abomination! That's all I really want to say, Mike. I just want to say what an abomination.
Well, okay. So if you go back through the history of our discussions about Joel Embiid, I always come back to the things that we've always talked about when it comes to Joel Embiid is one, he always seems like he has an injury. He's always hurt. He's never at full strength when you need him to be at full strength. So that's number one. Clearly, in this Olympics, in the lead up, he's coming off that knee injury that limited him and allowed him to come back for the last few games of the regular season and then into the playoffs. But clearly, he still was recovering heading into the USA basketball training camp. And then I don't know how many times I've heard people say since the training camp started through the exhibition games and into the first thing, hey, he's playing his way into shape. He's working his way into condition. And look, I've been saying that for I don't even know how many years, like 5 years. I've been saying this dude is just not, he's not in condition. Like you're never going to get Joel Embiid, the Philadelphia 76ers. And while you were gone, I talked a little bit about the Paul George signing for Philly. And yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's great to have Paul George. And if you have Paul George healthy and Joel Embiid healthy and Tyrese Maxey healthy, Philadelphia is going to be a really, really good team. They're going to be tough to beat. But odds of Joel Embiid being healthy and being in condition to be able to play 44 minutes in a playoff game for 4 straight rounds to lead Philly to an NBA championship. I'm sorry, Philly fans, that's not happening. And
But now
we
he's got
see
Paul
it here.
George, Mike, so he's safe. He's good.
Come on, man. We see it, but we see it here in the Olympics. Like he's not in shape. He just isn't. And I go back to take a look at his picture from when he was a freshman at Kansas and look at his body and then look at the body that that guy has today. And look, I know everybody gets heavier as they get older and they fill out and they mature and whatever, and their body changes a little
But
bit.
my
But
fit, Mike, the
there's
Team
no way you
USA.
can tell me that Joel Embiid, when he was a freshman, when you look at that photo of him or you watch highlights of Joel Embiid at Kansas, there is no way that you can tell me that the same guy who is in those highlights compared to the guy that we see in the NBA today, you can no way tell me that the guy that we see today is in good physical
Team,
condition, is in
team,
tip top shape. He's just not. He's not.
Team USA. Team USA lists him as 20 pounds heavier than LeBron. Baloney. Baloney. I'm
Muscle weighs more than fat.
baloney. There's no way.
You haven't heard that? You haven't heard that before? Muscle weighs
There's
more than
no.
fat?
LeBron's listed as 250 and Embiid is listed as 270. There's no way. No
Look,
way.
I mean, Embiid doesn't fit with the way that USA basketball has always played in terms of the up tempo, fast. It's just he's just not a good fit for what
he's
this
hit,
team
he's had one out
really
of
wants
six
to
good
do.
games, right? He had one good game.
Yeah, and they don't look. I guess the argument is there may be a game where you need him, but wouldn't you need him against Jokic theoretically? I mean, to match Jokic's size and physical. I mean, Jokic destroyed him in the first whatever 4 minutes or 6 minutes or however long he played, and that's a whole other thing. Like you want another take that makes sense. I mean, Jokic. Look, Serbia was what even during the I think the 28 minutes or whatever that Jokic played, and during the minutes where he sat, they were minus 26, and it's the same story throughout Jokic's career. When that guy's on the floor, he just makes everybody better. And then you look at Embiid, and I don't know, you can make arguments, and I know Embiid won the MVP 2 years ago, but look, there's no comparison when you start talking about Jokic versus Embiid, which guy
I'd
you'd
still
rather
take him
have.
over
If you want to
Simmons,
play
Mike.
winning best, if you want, yeah, I think you'd still probably take him over Simmons. But to be fair, Embiid hasn't led Philadelphia any further in the playoffs than
That's true.
Ben
True
Simmons
statement.
ever did. So, yes, certainly Jokic, I'm sorry, Embiid has been a much more productive NBA player since the days of our discussion. So that's one take that you definitely got right that I got wrong. But yeah, Embiid, he just he doesn't have a role on this team. I mean, I guess again, if you run into a big guy that has some bulk that you need to throw out there, and maybe the fact that Embiid's starting, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, AD should be the starting center on this team based on how he's played and based on how the U.S. team wants to play. And there's been a lot of discussion of did Grant Hill and Steve Kerr promise him a starting job in order to get him to commit to play with the U.S. and not go to France or Cameroon or whatever. And I don't know. Who knows whether that's true or that's not true? But the fact remains that when you watch Embiid, he doesn't really fit with what this team is trying to do. And again, he's not in shape and he's hurt. Like it's not a surprise. I mean, that's just what happens. So
Yeah.
yeah, they eh, let's put it this way: their path to the gold medal will be easier once they figure out that they need to put Embiid on the bench and limit his minutes to, hey, throw him out there and see if he can be effective against a second unit or against a particular matchup with one of these teams.
Yep. All right. I pulled up the website because didn't want to miss anyone. So I'm just going to go alphabetically for the rest of the guys. And some
Sounds
of
like a
these
plan.
guys, I mean, I don't really have much to say about Bam. Do you have anything to say about Bam? He is who we thought he
But
was.
yeah, he's played well, and I think the thing that you look at with Bam is that him and AD have really played well together as a defensive pairing. And then I think if you were playing those two guys together in the NBA, you'd worry about the spacing and can they shoot the ball well enough. AD really hasn't stepped out on the floor at all, but Bam, at least during the exhibition games, I forget what he did against Serbia, but in the exhibition games, Bam was stepping out a little bit on the floor and looking to
Yeah.
take some threes, which he did at the end of the season for Miami. So, yeah, I mean, I think Bam Adebayo is the guy that he is during the NBA season, right? He's an excellent defender, can guard all over the floor, not necessarily a guy that you're looking for, especially on this team. You don't need his offense, you need his ability to defend. And so he's been good. And I think I don't know if it's surprising, but the thing that's worked well for the US team is the pairing of Bam and Anthony Davis on the second unit. Defensively, they've really been able to protect the rim and clog the paint and keep teams out. Not that many of these international teams are really trying to get the ball inside anyway. Most of them just are trying to win the math game and chuck from three. But Bam's been as
Yeah.
advertised.
Okay. Next up is Devin Booker. Um, Once again, Devin Booker is what he is. He's going to shoot the ball. He's not going to play. He hasn't looked terrible when he's been out there, right?
He's been fine. I would say he's been
Oh,
about
did I
what
lose him?
you would have thought. I mean, I
Okay.
think the interesting part about Booker is sort of the comparison of who's going to get the minutes between him and Anthony Edwards. That's I think the real key is which of those two guys is going to soak up more minutes as the games get tougher and as we get into the medal round. I think probably at some point Kerr is going to have to pick between one of those two guys to get more of the minutes. And we'll see. To this point, I think the minutes have been divided fairly evenly between those two over the course of these first 6 games that the U.S. has played. But I think as we get into the medal round, I think we're going to
So
see that.
Booker had 26 minutes in the game against Serbia, and Anthony Edwards had 19.
So I still think the thing that Booker brings maybe a little bit more consistency with his shot, although, and he wants to play more in the mid range. Neither one of those guys is a big time 3-point shooter. So it'll just be interesting to see how those minutes
Hey,
break
Booker
down.
went
And
4 for 5 the other day. He went 4 for 5 against Serbia from three.
I'm just saying, like, it just in general, as a
Yeah,
general rule, I don't think either one of those guys is, neither of them is considered to be a great 3-point shooter. Obviously, Booker's great in the mid range and Edwards can play all over the floor, but neither one of them is considered, hey, this guy's a lockdown, knockdown
yeah,
3-point shooter. So,
yeah. All right, Drew Holiday.
and again, Drew is what he is, right? I mean, they have him on this team. If you start ranking guys in the NBA, I'm not sure how long it is before you get to Drew Holiday, but you certainly don't get to him as the 12th best player in the league. But when you talk about building a team, the same role that he played for Boston, the same role that he played when Milwaukee won a title, he just can defend multiple positions. He's so physical, he's so strong. When he's in a position where you don't need him to score, where his scoring is a bonus. I mean, he does have the ability to catch the ball inside and be strong and score over top of people, and he can knock down a three if he has to. I think he was probably a little bit overtaxed as the second best or third best player on Milwaukee when he slid into the fifth spot or even the fourth spot on the Celtics. I think that's the right place for him, and that's exactly where he is offensively on this Olympic team. But man, there's nobody. If you told me, hey, who do you want to guard an opposing team's two guard, point guard, wing player. I'm not sure that there's too many names I would get to before I'd get to Drew Holiday. So he's just, to me, he's a guy who's strictly additive and doesn't really take anything off the table in this environment where you don't need him to be your second leading
Yeah.
scorer. You just need him to be able to do things offensively to keep the other team honest and then do what he does at the other end of the floor. So he's been, look, there's a reason he was really good in the Tokyo Olympics and he's been really good for Team USA to this point. And I would expect him to continue to get major minutes again because he's just a guy who's defense first.
All right, Steph. I know we kind of mentioned him already. I think my favorite highlight that I've seen, other than the one LeBron play, was the 3-pointer he shot that he walked away from and like knew that it was in before. It was it was like when Swaggy P did his three, except it actually went in. So maybe that one will be like a gif that'll replace the Swaggy P gif where he shot it. You know which one I'm talking about, right? The Swaggy P.
I do. Yeah, I
Yeah,
saw it. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So I think that Steph three was pretty good. He's played pretty well. He only had 11 points. You know, he didn't shoot the ball great the other day, but once again, when you got all these other guys, I mean, he played 21 minutes. He had 11 points on 4 of 8 shooting, 3 of 7 from all of his shots, majority of his shots from behind the arc. Like solid, and I mean, what else do we have to say about Steph? I mean, we've talked about him
I
at
think the
length.
big thing with Steph is you expect that because the FIBA line is a little bit shorter than the NBA line, I think the expectation is that he's just going to bang home three after three after three. And you have to guess there's going to be a game where he hits six or seven threes, but he hasn't had that game really yet. I guess against Serbia, the first time in the exhibition, he made six threes, but otherwise, he hasn't had a really huge breakout where he's just been like on fire. He hasn't had one of those moments where
Yeah,
you're like, oh my God, he just scored 15 points in 3 minutes. He hasn't had one of those runs. And maybe at age 35, he's not going to have one of those runs. But certainly, I think that's when you talk about the line being a little bit shorter. I think that's kind of what people are looking for and expecting. But again, just like he does for the Warriors and just like he does in the NBA, because of who he is and because of his ability to shoot the ball, what he does to the other team defensively in terms of the adjustments that they have to make and the way he has to be guarded and played just frees up so much for everybody else. And I think the thing with Steph that I know that as a Golden State Warrior and us as Cavaliers fans, there's been moments of where I haven't actually been the biggest Steph fan when he's playing against the Cavs, but I'll go back to how I felt. I've said this on the podcast before. Prior to the Cavs Warriors 4 championship series in a row, Steph was probably my favorite guy to watch prior to that. Just thinking about his movement, his footwork, the way he just is constantly moving without the ball and just makes him so difficult to guard. And all those things that he does so well for the Warriors are also things that translate, like moving without the ball and being able to shoot and being a constant threat and having great footwork. Those are all things that translate to any level of basketball. I don't care where you are. And so I think the thing with Steph is everybody's kind of waiting for him to go off and have a big 6 or 7 threes made game, which I think he probably will in one of these. But to this point, he's been, I think, again, he's lived up to what your expectation of him is, with the exception of people are going to look for a big breakout 3 game from him at some point, which I think we'll get.
okay. The two Anthony's, we've kind of already mentioned them a little bit here and there. Anthony Davis, he hasn't played a lot of minutes, but you know, I think he's probably of the bigs gonna probably play the lesser of the minutes, probably because I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but they don't want to get him hurt. Like he might just get hurt just being out there. So I don't know. I think he only played like 15 minutes the other day. And then Anthony Edwards, once again, like I think next Olympics, provided that this is LeBron's last stand, which I think he's kind of already said this was going to be his last one, would also signify him like being the guy who holds the American flag, looking like George Washington. Um, I think Anthony Edwards is going to be the guy next time around, Mike. That's my bold prediction. I think he's going to be the guy. Like
I think Anthony Edwards thought he was going to be the guy in this Olympics after his performance last year in the World Cup in Philippines. Hey, he's out watching table tennis though.
oh, and he can do his Degeneration X celebration without getting technicals or ejected. Did you see him doing that in the game?
I did see him doing that. Did you see him watching the table tennis?
Yeah. He was getting excited.
That was great. Oh man, that was awesome.
I think I have to say this. Real quick. Side note. I really love that a lot of the guys are going, like a lot of the athletes are going out and like supporting. Because like,
why wouldn't you? I mean, why wouldn't you go and just watch stuff? I mean, what else are you going to be doing?
Yeah, and then I saw Scotty Scheffler. I'm going golf here for a second. Scotty Scheffler was watching the table tennis or watching something or the gymnastics today. But he's at the Olympic Village with his whole his wife and his 2 kids, like the baby, brand new baby.
All right.
I'm like, that's not much of a. I mean, I think all the.
I would love to see. I would love to see.
Their families.
I would love to see. Yeah, I would love to see Edwards play a game of table tennis against anyone who's in the Olympics playing ping pong. It'd be awesome.
Well, did you see the, speaking of a side, did you see the diver that did it?
Yeah, that was a good
back.
One. And he got a 0. Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that. It's funny though, because I don't know how your age plays into your Olympic viewing, because obviously I'm a little bit older than you, but there was a time where like I watched, like the Olympics was just on, at my house, where whatever, we're watching track and field, or you're watching swimming, or you're watching this or that or whatever. And to be honest, like I watched the basketball game and then I've seen a couple of highlights on Twitter, but other than that, I haven't really had
Mike,
the
that's
Olympics
all I've done
on.
Too. I'll honestly, I don't see myself watching too much Olympics. The time change problem is a problem for me with the kids being like,
right.
I know I could sit here and watch it at night and see all the like stuff that's already happened. I probably will watch the golf. I know that's probably not a surprise to you, but I'll probably watch the golf. I've watched some of the Team USA. I didn't even watch the whole game last night because it was at an inconvenient time. It's like it's not convenient for me to be sitting like watching it. I don't even, like I said, I don't know what time they play tomorrow. I'll try to watch some of it tomorrow, but I'm not a huge Olympic person anyways. I prefer the Summer Olympics, I think, to the Winter Olympics, but
yes, I do definitely. I definitely do.
But anyways, sorry.
I always used to watch I always used to think that like the 100 meters was always appointment TV. I always wanted to watch the 100 meters, the track, that kind of thing. The high jump was always interesting. Long jump back in the days of Carl Lewis. Always wanted to see that. So
that makes me remember. I'll probably pay attention to a pole vault too when it's on because of
Katie there you go.
Just because of Katie Najat. So that would be the whole reason.
But anyway, it's just like I just don't feel like I don't watch it in the same way. I don't consume it just like any other TV or sports. I don't consume it in the same way that I used to. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. All right. So we have 3 guys left really quickly, Mike, and then we've got Derek White, the last man on. Okay, who played a bunch of minutes, and then we got the guy on his team.
Let's leave Tatum for last.
Okay.
So let's talk Derek White. Oh, so first of all, the controversy, Derek White over Jaylen Brown. Clearly, from a resume standpoint, and from which of those 2 guys is the better player in a vacuum, I don't think there's any question that Jaylen Brown is the better player. So then the question becomes, is the decision correct to build a team to select Derek White over Jaylen Brown? Now, you can make the case for Derek White, just like Drew Holiday, in that he's a good defensive guard. He's a guy that is going to move the ball. He's a guy that's used to playing a role that isn't a star player that's going to demand shots or want minutes or all these other things that potentially could happen to Jaylen Brown. I think the argument for Jaylen Brown, when you talk about building a team, is the guy that they're replacing is Kawhi Leonard. And certainly Jaylen Brown is much closer to a facsimile of Kawhi Leonard than Derek White is. So if you thought that a Kawhi Leonard style player was who was going to be that guy on the 12-man roster, that it would make sense to replace him with Jaylen Brown. I don't have a big problem with them choosing Derek White. I understand it from a team building standpoint, but I can also completely understand if I'm Jaylen Brown. I just won the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I just won the NBA Finals MVP. I already have one teammate who's on the team, and then they choose a second teammate of mine to be on the team who, look, you can make the argument back and forth whether you want Tatum or Brown or who's better. And I think the consensus would be that Tatum is a better player, despite the fact that Brown won both of those playoff MVP awards. But you never, ever could make the case that Derek White is a better player than Jaylen Brown. And so, certainly, if you're Jaylen Brown, you're sitting in his shoes, you can understand where he would be upset. And now you can argue whether or not it's right to come out and criticize the fact that they chose your teammate over you, or do you just kind of have to sit back and grumble in private and bite your tongue? That's a lot easier to say than it is to do when you get snubbed the way Jaylen Brown did. But like I said, you can certainly make the case for why Derek White is on this team and why Jaylen Brown is not. But that would be a hard pill to swallow if you're Jaylen Brown.
especially if you just won the NBA Finals MVP.
That's what I'm saying. But look, White's a good player, and White's going to help this team because he does some things that other guys don't necessarily do. Now, again, if Derek White ends up being the difference between this team winning a gold medal and not winning a gold medal, then there's probably some deeper problems that have arisen. But I do understand the logic behind picking a guy who is a good defensive guard and who's used to sort of playing a role as opposed to being a star.
Yep. All right. So the two guys that wear number 0 in the NBA got 0 minutes. Tyrese Halliburton and Jason Tatum. Now, supposedly Steve Kerr had a conversation with him before the game and said, "You're for matchup reasons, you're probably not playing tonight." I just don't understand when you're up 26 points or up 30 points in the fourth quarter, why you wouldn't just put them out there for 5 minutes. Like, at what point does that matter anymore? Like, if that's the game plan going in and then you're up by 30 points, why wouldn't you just be like, okay, I don't want to give this guy 0 minutes because then it's going to become a problem. Like, I don't understand the logic, but maybe I'm just ignorant. I don't know. And the same thing for Halliburton. Like, I mean, Halliburton is essentially, and he's not as good of a defender as Derek White, but they can basically fill the same role in a sense. So Derek White literally was added to the team like after training camp was over. I mean, that was at the end of training camp. Like, why wouldn't you put Halliburton in a position to play minutes? I just don't. I'm questioning Steve Kerr, who's won 3 NBA championships as a coach or 4 NBA championships as a coach. And what, like, how many did he win as a player? Did he win 4 as a player too? Spurs,
I think, yeah,
Spurs and
3 with the Bulls, 3 with the Bulls, I believe. Yeah.
So, like, I'm not trying to like say I have a better like, but I don't understand the reason. We hate on Jason Tatum all we want. I'm not even going there with it. I'm just saying, like, how could you not? You knew you were going to get asked questions. Why did Jason Tatum get 0 minutes? Why did Tyrese Halliburton get 0 minutes? And Kerr had immediate answers. He's like, well, we already talked to him. We said they were going to play. Tatum will be involved in the next game plan. I don't really know that anyone asked about why Halliburton got 0 minutes, but they definitely asked about Tatum. So,
all right. So,
I mean, and I don't know how long you want to go. I don't know how long. We don't need to like take this like too long, but I just don't understand the logic.
So I guess the question becomes, when you start talking about, do you want to field questions of why those guys got 0 minutes? Would you still field questions if they each got 3 minutes in garbage time? I don't know the answer to that question. My guess is probably you'd still field questions about why those two guys were the last two guys to get out on the floor and why didn't they play during any meaningful time during the game, which again, those are all fair questions to ask of Steve Kerr and the coaching staff. I mean, clearly going into this, I don't think anybody would have necessarily thought that Tatum would have been the guy that would have been in jeopardy of ever not playing any minutes. So let me address Halliburton first, and then I'll get to Tatum. The thing with Halliburton is you look at he had one of the weirdest NBA seasons this past year when you look at how good he was for the first 6 weeks, where I think if you'd have voted for All NBA after the first 6 weeks, he probably would have been first team All NBA. And then really fell off a cliff after he got hurt and played at a solid level, but arguably, I would say maybe not even an all-star level. If you took the second half of his season, he probably, if you projected that over the course of the entire season, he probably wouldn't have even been an all-star. And so the question is, which of those guys are you seeing? Now, he last year in the World Cup played very well and was a guy who had an excellent plus minus during the World Cup in Philippines and was an important part of that team. And yet, I think you look at him, and when you look at what Steve Kerr may be trying to accomplish, he's not as good defensively as Derek White or Drew Holiday. And those are the kind of the minutes that he's competing for. He's arguably a better offensive player than either one of those two guys when it comes to both his ability to pass. When you think about he's been close to double figures in assists the past 2 seasons, and then as a scorer, he's averaged a higher he has a higher scoring average than both of those guys. And I think most people would contend that he's a better offensive player. So again, if you're looking for defense, yeah, it makes sense to play Holiday and White, which is what I think they're looking for out of that position when they have those guys on the court. So you can understand it. I think the question becomes when you look at it, of all the guys who are on the team, clearly White was a late add. I would say Halliburton probably has, to me, the shakiest case of being on the team when you look at what he's done compared to maybe some other guys that you could look at that could have been on this team. When you think about Jalen Brunson or even Donovan Mitchell, there's probably some other guys that I'm forgetting. But I think Halliburton's case to be on the team, at least the original version of the team, was probably the shakiest of anybody. Although, again, like I said, he played well in the World Cup last year. So when you look at trying to play 12 guys in a game that's competitive, really, really hard to do. Anybody who's coached obviously knows that that's almost impossible to do. So, yeah, clearly some guys occasionally are not going to get minutes. It's not surprising that Halliburton was a choice. It is kind of surprising that Tatum is the guy. I think to talk about the matchups weren't really that good. I mean, to me, one of the things that when I look at Tatum, you feel like he's, I don't want to say matchup proof, but he can guard all over the floor, right? I mean, defensively, it's not like he's a dude that you can't put out there that can't guard people at his size. And offensively, I mean, we've talked about his flaws over the past 2-3 years in terms of shoots too many threes, doesn't go to the basket hard, has some moments that he disappears and maybe isn't as good of a playmaker as he'd like him to be. But to have him be one of the guys that get 0 minutes, as much as I think that this NBA championship for the Celtics sort of validated the point that you and I have been talking about for 3 years, that I'm not sure he's an A1 top tier superstar. And look, Boston obviously won the title with him and as their theoretical best player, but I don't think that Jason Tatum is ever going to be, and certainly is not now, a guy who is going to put a team on his back and carry them to an NBA championship. So I don't think his right to play as a number one guy or be a guy that's going to get 30 minutes a night on an Olympic team is set in stone. But I also am surprised that he was the guy that got 0 minutes, if that makes any sense.
Yep. Okay. Going forward, I mean, supposedly he's going to play tomorrow. So
matchup excuse to me just doesn't. I don't buy the matchup excuse because if you look up and down the roster, Tatum's as versatile as any guy that you have on that roster. Like, who on Serbia is he having trouble matching up with that he couldn't guard Bogdan Bogdanovic? I mean, I don't buy the matchups or the game plan. To me, that excuse rings false. I don't know what the
Yeah.
real I don't know what the real story is, but the fact that, hey, it wasn't a good matchup for him, I don't really buy that from Steve Kerr. But it
Yeah.
is what it is.
All right.
So we'll
Anything
see. What
else,
do you think
team?
they do? Do they? I mean, do they win the gold? Is there? Do they
Yeah,
lose a
they have
game?
to.
Do they lose?
Come on.
Do they lose a game?
No,
Do they lose a game?
no, no, no.
All right.
Unless the French officials favor France again, like they did today. That was a horrendous ejection. Get out of here with that. That's horrendous, flagrant. Get out of here. Nonsense. Horrendous.
FIBA officials, man, you never know what you're getting. You have
Home
no
cooking.
idea. So I
Home
guess,
cooking, baby.
look, you could. I mean, I don't expect them to lose. I think they go undefeated on their way to a gold medal. But if they do lose, I think you hit on one thing that definitely would play a factor in them losing, which would be the officiating. And then I think the second thing would be obviously the 3-point line. That if
I
they play a team that gets hot from three, fires up a ton of them, and conversely, the U.S. has an off day shooting threes, I think the combination of those things could allow an
yeah.
upset to take place, but
By
I
by
don't
the way,
expect it to.
the 2 games I have watched, I have thoroughly enjoyed the fact that there's not a lot of complaining going on because they don't know the officials and the officials are just just straight up ignoring them. It's there.
Well, they don't speak the same language a lot of times either. So
Yeah,
you can be yelling at them whatever you want. They don't speak your language. So
it's great. It's
it
great.
doesn't
It's
really do any.
great.
It
It's
is.
great. It's. I wish maybe we should just import a bunch of foreign officials to ref NBA games. Although
What's sad
then we
is
might get
that
that might become a political political statement. But I'm
what's
just saying.
sad is that we've just become so accustomed to all the complaining that we're almost numb to it. And then the fact that you notice when they're not complaining and how much better the product looks when they're not stopping to complain at every call, it leads me again to think that the NBA really should crack down more on the complaining. And whether that's, I don't know that they have to go draconian and tee everything up and exactly how that works, but it feels like that would be a good joint project between the league and the players union to sort of work to clean that up together for the good of the league
I,
and just
I
for the good of sports. When
maybe
you start talking about trying to teach kids how to be good sports and then you look at some of the behaviors that you see from players in the NBA and then you see those things emulated by kids
yeah,
playing the
and
game,
and
it seems to
and
me that would be a great joint
and,
project for
and to
the
be
NBA and the players union.
to be clear, NBA is not the only sport, but I definitely think it's the worst sport, right? Like when I think about Major League Baseball, the only time I ever think about baseball problems is when people are arguing strike zones. That's the only time I
Right.
ever see a problem, and that's going to be fixed within 3 years. It's going to be robot parts soon. Like that's going to be fixed in 3 years, and then they're not going to be able to complain anymore. Okay, in football, you know, the only time you really ever see people getting like all bent out of shape about things is like roughing the passer penalty situations. But
Pass interference and roughing the
pass interference,
passer are the two.
that's really the only you don't see a lot of people like if people make in uh, if an official makes a egregious call, but it doesn't happen. Like it's not like I tune in to any football game and I'm going to expect to see players complaining to officials the whole game. It's just not happening. Like the NBA is the most like well in soccer too, but ugh,
Well,
they
the
like
NBA is the most visible. Basketball, you're the most visible, right? You're in shorts and a tank top. You're right there. The fans are right on top of the court. It's a smaller court than baseball, football, soccer. Everything
yeah.
is compact. You see the guys' faces. You know it's part of what makes basketball so appealing as a product and why so many NBA players are
Well, that's like a perfect
celebrities and
segue, Mike. That's like a perfect segue. Product.
it is.
Product.
It is. But I mean, you get what I'm saying. Like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
the reason why NBA personalities are what they are compared to what NFL which is obviously a much more popular sport, at least in the United States. The reason why we have so many more basketball players that are product endorsers and that we see them in the media way more than football players is again because when a basketball player is playing, we're exposed to them for that entire 48-minute game. We can see their face. We're up close,
Yeah.
both on TV and if you go and see a game in person. Versus if you watch a football game, when the guy's playing, it's just you're looking at his jersey and his helmet. You're not really seeing the guy's face. You're not equating it in the same way. And I think that goes to the positive for the game of basketball and for players. Conversely, the negative side of it is you see a lot more of the complaining and all those kinds of things versus in football, you're not seeing that in the same way. That's not to say, again, I have no idea how much complaining is going on out on the field with football, but clearly in basketball,
You
it's
wouldn't
just
even be
much
able
more
to hear it
visible.
anyways, right? I mean,
Right.
unless
Yeah.
unless they're
I
on the
just think
mic. But
it
I
would
don't
be a
know.
great, let's put it this way. I still feel like that would be a great joint project for the
Yeah.
players union and the NBA to work together to try to eliminate at least some to cut down on some of the complaining with officials. So
Yeah. All right. So you spoke of the product. Well, let's talk about the nitty gritty. The NBA signed an 11. I'm going to read the press release. The NBA, or one of the press releases, or a condensed press release. NBA signs a new 11-year media agreements with Walt Disney Company, NBC Universal, and Amazon Prime Video through the 2035-36 season. Jesus, 12 years from now, Mike. Disney will remain home of the NBA Finals, the Christmas Day games, ESPN games on Wednesdays, NBA Saturday primetime on ABC, and NBA Sunday showcase packages. NBCU to telecast opening night, new Sunday night primetime games after the NFL season, and Tuesday regionalized games, Peacock games on Monday, and NBA All Star. So the NBC is going to get the All Star game. Also, it has been confirmed that Roundball Rock will be making a return. Thumbs up. And that Mike Tirico is going to be back, is going to be the lead on the NBA. I'm okay with that too. I'm good. I'm good with
I like
that.
Tarico.
I'm
Yeah,
good,
Tarico's
Tirico. So
okay.
okay. Prime Video to stream the in-season tournament, SoFi NBA play-in tournament, and games on Thursday and Friday nights. Amazon to serve as strategic partner and third-party global destination of NBA League Pass. Agreements include more national games than ever before on broadcast television and all national games available broadly distributed streaming services. Okay. The other thing that I've read, and I haven't been able to dive too far into it, is the prime situation with the regionalized broadcasts. Supposedly baked in there somewhere is that all these like Bally Sports and things, you'll be able to watch your local teams games on Prime with no extra charge. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. I've heard some things about that, but I don't exactly, or at least some of their games are going to be distributed on Prime. Um, you know, whether they're like, I don't exactly know how that's going to work, and I don't know that it's been clearly stated what that looks like. But all of these things now, TNT tried to match the proposal from the Amazon Prime thing, and NBA was denied. But TNT said that they are going to be looking into taking some sort of action because they do not believe the NBA acted in good faith because they matched the deal. They were in their contract. They were given the opportunity to match the deal. So I don't know if this is going to be a long, drawn out process. I don't know what's going to happen, but yeah. So it seemingly looks like it's going to be the end of the best in studio show. Um, you know that there is, and there's been rumors that Amazon's going to try to snipe them, but Charles Barkley already said that if it wasn't TNT, he wasn't doing it. And most of the time, Charles Barkley doesn't really go back on what he says. I could see any of the other guys possibly doing it, but I don't know. I don't know. I mean, Ernie Johnson's kind of in a good situation because he still does the March Madness stuff. He still does TNT still has March Madness, and he does all the March Madness stuff. Shaq, I saw something that Shaq owns 500 businesses. Did you know? Did you know this? He has 500 businesses in some way, shape,
Oh,
or
well, there you go.
form.
All right.
I don't know. I don't know what Kenny the Jet's doing, other than tripping over cords and running to the prompter. So, um,
Look, I mean, ultimately, with inside the NBA, I think it comes down to a somebody or multiple somebodies is going to throw a boatload of money at all those guys, and the question will just become, what is the price that it will take for them to go to, whether it's Amazon or NBC? What will they do? I don't know the answer to that question. Will they go to ESP? I have no idea. But I would say that eventually there's a price that if somebody wants them bad enough to come back and be together, I'm pretty sure there's probably a price tag that could get
see
them all
Robert
there.
Downey Jr. See Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, look, right. He's
You know what I'm
back
referring
from,
to.
is he back to
Back from
Marvel or whatever?
Yeah, but he's not going to be Iron Man.
No, what's he going to be?
Doctor Doom, baby.
Is that a real character or is that was
Yeah,
that somebody else?
no Doctor Doom's like probably other than he. I mean, in one of the comics, I mean, he's killed Thanos in multiple comic series. So he's like some people deem him as the greatest MCU villain. Our greatest
Okay,
Marvel villain of all time. I'm not trying to get into the nerdy weeds here, but Doctor Doom,
perfect.
and there is one series that Tony Stark, it's the Anthony Stark variant, becomes Doctor Doom. So they're thinking that might be the way to go, or there's some other theories out there, but
Was that in WandaVision?
no, it was not in WandaVision, Mike.
Oh,
It's not in
sorry.
WandaVision.
Okay. Anyway, so despite that little sojourn off to the side of things, I have no idea what Jason's even talking about. So kudos to you out there if you understand what he's talking about. Good for you. But anyway, I think there's a number out there money wise that if you want to keep inside the NBA together, that somehow somebody will figure out a way to make that happen. If those four guys want it to happen, there's a price out there. I think the big thing with the TV contract is that it was clear that the NBA wanted to dip their toe into streaming, and Amazon was obviously the main bidder or the winning bidder that ended up getting the deal. And it will be very, very interesting to see whether or not the NBA drives any additional business to Amazon Prime, whether they see a benefit in terms of their subscribers to Prime Video. I have no idea whether that will or won't happen. But I think when you're the NBA, we're right here on the cusp of major sports trying to decide, do we go to streaming, and how do we divide up our packages. So it was clear that the NBA, if they were going to sign a long rights deal, which this one at 11 years, they weren't going to leave themselves out of the streaming business if for no other reason that they wanted to test run it and see what it was going to look like. And so it wasn't surprising that Amazon Prime was a part of the deal. And clearly the writing had been on the wall that TNT was probably going to be out before the deal was eventually signed. So over the next 11 years, it'll be interesting to see how the sports media landscape plays out. And who knows what will happen, whether or not the next deal, broadcast television, will still exist, whether we'll have cable and where ESPN is 11 years from now, even looking back 11 years to where ESPN was at that point. Clearly, streaming video 11 years ago was next to nothing. And who knows where we'll be in 2035 when this deal expires. So the NBA wanted to dip their toe into the streaming services, and it'll be interesting to see what the result of that ends up being. And then I think the other thing that you talked about was how does that affect being able to watch your local games. I wonder if at some point, and I don't know if it's written into this TV deal or not, or exactly how it works, but at some point, it feels like to me that if I was the NBA, I would just consolidate everything, offer every single game on League Pass, even if you have to pay more for it, and just simplify it. So if I buy League Pass, I get every single game. I get my local games, I get my national games, I get every team's games, and just make the price whatever the price is. It still comes down to, for me, the US consumer at least, and I don't know what it's like around the world and how much the NBA's revenue is driven by media rights outside of this country. But in this country, if people want something, they seem to figure out a way to pay for it, regardless of what it costs. And so, to me, if I was the NBA, and again, I don't know all the inner workings of the business of the regional sports networks and local broadcast rights and all that stuff. And again, obviously, the rights to games in LA are worth a lot more to the Lakers than the rights to Cavs games are in Cleveland. So I don't know how you divvy up that revenue, but certainly from a consumer standpoint, the best option for consumers would be NBA League Pass. I buy it and I get every single game, including my own team's local broadcast. But I guess there's some revenue sharing that would have to probably be worked out in that case. So we'll see.
Yep. All right. Anything else, Mike, that you want to talk about, or
I feel like there was something that we were talking there, that's something that popped into my head that I felt like was relevant, but it seems to have escaped me at this point. So I think at this juncture, it's probably best if we just wrap it up there. There's not really much else to talk about at this point. So
all right. Well, we'll be back next week, right, Mike? We'll be back next week,
we will talk
and
some more Olympics, and we'll be that much further along. I
if
think
and if Team USA loses to South Sudan tomorrow, we'll have an emergency pod after our interview episodes.
I like it. That could be a good plan. If we hopefully that won't happen. But yeah, we might have to. Hopefully, we don't have an emergency South Sudan podcast. That would not be a joyous
Well,
occasion
did
for
you
us
see? Did
here.
you see that? Did you see that Luau Dang is funding South Sudan team?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, good for him, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
good
just the
man.
fact that they've been a country since 2011 and they qualified for the Olympics is obviously, once you get there, you want to win some games. But just the fact that they've qualified for the Olympics is quite a feat for a country that didn't exist until 2011. And big kudos to Luol Deng for stepping up and funding that team and helping them to have the Olympic experience. It's really, again, just hard to believe when you think about how short the existence of that country has been.
Yep. Anything else, Mike?
Nope. I think that's it. Let's leave it there for tonight. We appreciate you jumping back in on our NBA episodes after a brief vacation slash illness hiatus. And we will be back to our regular schedule of putting out our NBA episodes on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. So we will see you next week. Thanks for checking this one out, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.